Hello, today we'll be discussing the Findings tab in Sentinel. We will be focusing specifically today on DAST findings, but normally on this tab you'll be able to see all of the findings from all of your assets for any license type, mobile, API, SAST, any of it. So what you're going to see is you'll see the vulnerability ID, the rating, the class, the CVSS score, if you've chosen to show it, the status, last opened, last closed, asset name, asset type, last retest, and retest. The vulnerability ID is how we uniquely identify that particular vulnerability. So if you ever have questions on it and you're not using the Ask a Question feature, which I'll be going over soon, you're going to want to provide this ID so we know which one you're talking about. The rating, is it critical, high, medium, low, or note? The class, what type of vulnerability is it? The CVSS score is based on version 3, and you can also choose to hide this by pressing Hide CVSS score. And as you can see, it's no longer there. You'll also see the status, which is by default set to open. That way, if you fix something as you retest things, it'll just disappear and you don't have to look at it anymore. However, you can also filter on vulnerability status, closed, accepted, invalid, mitigated, and out of scope. The last open date is exactly how it sounds. Last close date, if you're filtering on closed. The asset name, since again, it could be for any of your assets. The asset type, since again, it could be for any of your assets. And again, site has to do specifically with DAST. The last retest date will appear here, and then the retest type. So you'll notice a couple of different retest types. The computer icon means it's a scanner found vulnerability and an automatic retest is available. So if you were to push this, it would request a retest. You can see there's one here running already. And that would be done within about 30 minutes or less. You might also see one with the person icon, and that means it's a manual retest. And that means one of our engineers has to manually retest the vulnerability, so it'll take up to around 24 business hours. You'll also notice some quick actions. A chain link icon will give you a list of the vector IDs, the vector URLs, the method we use to send the request, parameter name if applicable, date open, date closed if applicable, and the last retest date. You can also add any notes that you'd like to any of these attack vectors. You can see I've already added one here. You just add a note, put in whatever note you want, and hit save. Just so you're aware though that these are notes for you and your team. They're not notes for WhiteHat. We will not see these, so please do not send us notes this way. If adding any tags will help you organize the vulnerabilities, you can also do so there by clicking on the gift tag icon. That green V there, it just means that it's been verified by our vulnerability verification team. Also want to point out, you might notice that on a couple of these vulnerabilities, there's this ratings icon. And that indicates that rating is not WhiteHat's default rating. It's been changed or altered in some way. So that's just a quick way for you to see that it's not our default rating. In another video, I'll be going over how to change ratings and customize things. Just to quickly go over bulk actions. So you can retest the vulnerabilities, so you can select as many as you want and retest the vulnerabilities. We do ask though that you only request retest for vulnerabilities that you believe you fixed. If not, it can create a bit of a backlog. Customized vulnerability is going to be gone over again in another video, and change vulnerability status has to do specifically with our SAST EE service, and so will be gone over in the SAST findings video. So if I were to hop into one of these, let's just hop into the cross-site scripting, shall we? It takes you to the vulnerability detail page. And on this page, you'll see the vulnerability class, the vulnerability ID, where it's located, the date it was first opened, the date it was last opened, how long it's been open, its verification and vulnerability statuses, the CVSS score information. In the middle, the type, so automatic retest is the same as the computer icon that you saw, so retest within 30 minutes. The other option is again a manual retest, which is the person icon. You'll see the last retest date, and you can retest the vulnerability from here. If you want to know the breakdown of a rating, over here on the right, you'll see the overall rating here, which is a high. If you press the arrow, you'll see how the impact and likelihood play into that overall rating. And if you've set a priority, how the priority also plays into it. If you set a priority, it is going to affect the overall rating. But if you don't set a priority, if you leave it at none, then it's only impacting likelihood that will go into the overall rating. Down here at the bottom, we have the attack vectors. So what you'll see is the vector ID, the status, request URL, parameter value, if applicable, the method we use to send the request, date we found it, last retest, notes. That plus icon indicates there are no notes present. If it was a speech bubble, there would be notes either way. You can press on the plus sign to add notes or press on the speech bubble to see the notes. It is possible to have more than one vector ID. For instance, cross-site scripting is a really common example where you might find more than one vector ID. So if in a URL there's two parameters, parameter A and parameter B. If both parameter A and B are susceptible to cross-site scripting, we will list them separately as different attack vectors. So now, before I go over these tabs, I'm just going to hop into the vector detail page by clicking on that vector ID. You'll see now it says I'm on the vector detail page, so it has the same information as on the previous page, but you also see the scanner request that we sent, the scanner response that we received. You have the attack vector description, which make sure to click read more to see it all, which will include reproduction steps, proof of concept. If it's those types of vulnerabilities, if it's informational, it'll give a description of what information is being leaked, things like that. And then if there's notes, this is where you can view them or add them. Now, going back to the vulnerability detail page. This description and solution is more robust, so you'll notice that this description is the same as the one that we went over on the vector detail page. But it also includes a class description with outside references to help you understand the vulnerability better. A custom solution, not all have custom solutions, but some do. And then there will always be a class solution with outside references to help you understand how to fix it. Now, if you have any questions for our vulnerability verification team, you can click on Ask a Question. Now this is your direct line to our Threat Research Center. So you just click Ask a Question. It already has the vulnerability ID, so you do not need to provide that. Basically, this would be used for things like, don't understand the description, why is this a vulnerability? Again, it's your direct line to our vulnerability verification team, and you can expect a response within 24 business hours. It is important to note that you should not be requesting retests through this functionality. If you want to request a retest, please actually press the retest button. The last one is a vulnerability history, and I can't show you a whole lot in our demo account, but what you would see is the date of any activity related to the vulnerability, the activity type, so vulnerability opened, vector closed, the rating was changed, anything like that, the specific details, so the rating was changed from medium to high, more specific information basically, and then who modified it. That way, if things were changed, you can track who did the modifications. If you're interested in SAST or one of our other license types, please see our other videos.